Hi guys, this is Mrs. Patel. If you are watching this video, it means that you need a little bit more practice on evolution through natural selection. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to watch this video, you're going to answer the questions, and then after this you're going to do a little bit more practice on this chapter so that you can make sure you rock it on the EOC. So, Charles Darwin is basically the father of evolution. He came up with the theory of evolution, and basically the theory is survival of the fittest, the best adapted for its environment. So to humans, to us, when we say something is really fit, we typically think about it being the strongest or the best in the best shape, big muscles, that kind of thing. But really what it means in biology is that it's the best adapted so that they can survive and reproduce. The whole point of being alive essentially is to be able to pass on your genes. So the best adapted will do that. The question is, what causes organisms to change and adapt? What causes this to happen? The first is essentially competition. You have to be a competitor, to be able to win at anything, you have to outcompete. You have to be better. So in the human world, we're talking about whoever has the better grades, they won the academic race. Whoever is the fastest will win the track race. In the animal world, we're talking about the ones who can survive the best, the ones that can get the most food, the best habitat to get whatever they need so that they can survive and reproduce. So one of the reasons why we have evolution is basically because competition pushes them to look differently. They all can't have the same shaped beaks. These finches, they all can't have the same shaped beaks. They have to all compete for different food because there's not enough food for all of them. So over thousands of years, all eating different foods, they got different shaped beaks. The next reason why organisms change and adapt is through mutations. Random mutations will give you different traits. If the traits are helpful, then they're going to stay in the population. If they help the animals, or the organisms, not just animals, if they help the organisms survive and reproduce, then they're going to pass their genes down to the next generation. If for some reason the mutation is not helpful, for example, this two-headed turtle here, this is probably not a helpful mutation. Maybe it is. I don't know, but let's say it didn't help them. These guys would probably not be able to survive long enough so that they can reproduce, okay? So if it's not helpful, that adaptation or mutation will die out. If it's helpful, it's going to stay. The most common example is the giraffe neck. We've got those really long giraffe necks now. That's because that mutation over a long period of time made their necks longer and longer and helped them from basically dying out. Now, another reason why organisms adapt or change is because humans force them to do this. We select for specific traits so that depending on what we want, they have specific qualities. This is known as artificial selection. This is not natural selection, it's artificial. We're doing it. So we're breeding traits to be in the next generation. Corn, this is actually what corn used to look like. This is now what corn looks like. And that's because we wanted it to look like this. So we bred it a certain way so that it would appear large with these big corn kernels. The same is true for dogs. We artificially selected for different traits for dogs, which gave us all sorts of different breeds. completely different. They're all still the same species in this case, but they have completely different features. So this is artificial selection. This is another reason why organisms change and adapt. And what can happen over a long period of time is that the species evolve to be new species, completely different species than their original ancestors. And that's because they are separated. This is known as speciation. This is a big, important vocabulary word. Speciation basically is evolution that makes isolated populations into new species that can no longer breed and reproduce viable offspring. So what happens is we have a population. Here we've got a population of different colored bugs, beetles. They're all the same species of beetles. We've got light and dark beetles. Something happens where they are separated. Looks like it's a river here. They're separated by a new river. Over a long period of time, they are in two different environments. Let's say this is a wooded environment. It's got in the woods and the trees, and this is maybe in the plains or sandy area. So over a long period of time, all of these bugs, all of these beetles become darker in color, and these become lighter in color. They evolve so that they can blend in with their environment. Eventually, this river dries up, and what we have is these two populations that have come back together. They would be new species if they can no longer breed and make offspring that can have babies. Viable offspring means that their offspring can have offspring, okay? Their babies can have babies. Let me show you this one more time. Speciation. So here's an example of a species of pine tree. So they're all together and they are separated. They end up becoming separated by this big river here, okay? Over time, they evolve differently. They have different environments that they're exposed to, so they evolve different adaptations to survive there. And you can see in this case, they're different colors. Eventually, this river dries up and the populations once are together again, but they are new species if they can no longer reproduce. Now, this happens most commonly when we have the populations in isolation. Isolation means they are alone by themselves, a population all by themselves. This happens a lot on islands, or as you can see, you know, with the rivers separating. But when there's no longer this genetic flow, the gene flow, when there's no longer gene flow into this population, they're going to evolve separately. Isolated populations end up all evolving the same way. So in this picture, you can see two different colors of beetles. The green ones apparently are much easier to see. So in this population, this small population of beetles, most of them end up becoming this lighter color. This is evolution in a picture. And because of this, they have a lot less diversity. So this can run the risk of them kind of being vulnerable to environmental changes. Maybe the whole species would then die off. This is showing you something very similar. Here we've got a normal mix of red and purple, and what happens is it's a small population where there's no new genes coming in, and the population is really made a lot smaller. Maybe like an apocalypse came through and wiped out most of this population. Well, what you can see that survived, it's mostly purple and just a few yellow. And because of that, the next generation you can see is mostly purple. So if this kept going on, this would probably continue. The same is true for this one. If you have a really small population, if anything changes in that environment, there's less diversity, and this can lead to genetic drift, where the genes are drifting so that they all look one way. When it comes to genetic diversity, you don't want all of the organisms to be the same. Natural selection pushes us all to be the same. Nature pushes us to have the same adaptations. But really, evolution is what allows us to survive. Here, for example, all these corn species, there are so many different varieties of corn species, they're going to be fine with the changing environments. Bananas, on the other hand, there's very little to no genetic diversity. If and when the climate changes too much, bananas are gone. Hopefully you don't like bananas. Okay, let's look at evolution. Evolution is the theory that species basically came from our ancestors, different ancestors that have been modified over the years. The genes have slightly changed because of natural selection. Now, evolution is a theory, and this is these 6 things here. These are the evidence that supports the theory of evolution. We're going to go through each one, but we've got the fossil record, comparative anatomy, DNA. We've actually seen changes observed, comparing embryos, and looking at vestigial structures. So let's start with the first one, comparing embryos. If you look at these embryos here, we've got fish, salamander, chicken, rabbit, human. All of them have very, very similar embryos. What this points to is basically the fact that all of them must have developed from the same species. All of them must have a common ancestor. A common ancestor is the reason why they look so similar. So they must have all developed or evolved from the same ancestor. So that's comparative embryology. Vestigial structures. This is another evidence for evolution. Basically, these are pieces of bodies, pieces of your body or other organisms' bodies that are no longer used. They used to be important, but now they're not. The appendix is a big one in humans. We don't use it anymore. It used to be used to eat really difficult to digest food. Now it's easy. The pelvic bone in a femur, they used to have legs, they don't anymore. Humans also have wisdom teeth we don't need anymore. We have muscles behind our ears that some people can wiggle their ears. That's vestigial. We used to be able to move our ears. We can't anymore. We even have tailbones. So vestigial structures, this is showing evolution. They're evolving to no longer need these pieces and parts of the body. Homologous structures. Homologous structures mean that they have the same bones on the inside, possibly different functions of the limb, but the bones are the same. What this points to is a common ancestor. We all used to have the same ancestor and we evolved differently. Humans, cats, whales, and bats. These are homologous structures. This is comparing the anatomy. We can also look directly at DNA. DNA is showing us that the theory of evolution is very strong. Chimpanzees have 48 chromosomes. Humans have 46. For a long time, we didn't know what happened to those chromosomes, but basically what turned out is that the chromosomes found in chimpanzees, these 2, they just fused with 2 of ours. So we can actually look at DNA, and these are the missing 2 chromosomes from chimpanzees, and we have the exact same chromosomes chimpanzees had, or have, I should say. So we can look at DNA to show us the evolution of a species. We can also look at the fossil record. We can see evolution happening in the fossils. This is a horse. They used to be tiny. They have slowly, over millions of years, evolved to be much, much larger. We can use fossils. Fossils are one of our strongest forms of evolution, or of evidence for evolution, because we can really see these species evolving. We can also look at changes over time. We can look at how species have evolved. We can see how insects can evolve to be resistant to pesticides. Bacteria can be evolving to be resistant to antibiotics. We can see evolution happening. Now, human evolution, basically the theory is that we have a common ancestor with a chimpanzee. And the biggest visible difference between us and chimps is that humans can walk on 2 legs, which means bipedalism, where chimpanzees are quadrupedal. They walk on 4. And basically the last piece of evidence for human evolution is looking at our fossils. We've noticed that over time our jaws have gotten much smaller. and much more delicate, and our skulls have gotten much larger to fit our new brains.